and its beauty doesn't necessarily have to be joyful or whatever. The pains, I mean, I'm watching my own body crumble like a cookie. I got a long list of shit going on. And it's not all comfortable, but it's still all within me. And when I'm here and looking at Robert here, Robert is within me. And if there's a seamless quality about that right now. And I call that love. That's where, especially where two meet in that seamless way. There's really no name that can do it justice because it's not in the realm of a vocabulary. But it's just sense it. It feels like love to me. And that's fellowship. It's seeing, or what I would call equality, a vision. The wise people that I have met have had visions of equality that it was impossible to get beneath their vision of equality to look up to them. And Robert is one of them.
Wowee, I love you too. I really do. Ah, it's so beautiful to be seen. It's so beautiful to be seen. John, you really touched my heart. My God. Fuck. It's what it is, you know. Nobody's going to win. It's not what it's about. It's about, in your metaphor, it's about inhaling this aroma when the flower is open. Not judging it. Actually, and as you say, there's often a lot of pain involved in that, physical suffering. And sometimes there's terrible sadness that's psychological, not physical, and all the rest. And it seems to me, and has really all my life since childhood, that all of this religious stuff and this philosophical airy-fairy and all of it is only a way of insulating oneself from what we really all know. We all really know. We all really know this. It's not like Robert Saltzman knows it and now I have to tell all of you, hey, you're going to die and everything. I don't think so. You already knew that before you came here. What I'm saying is, I have a kind of a message, I guess, at this point, which is just to drop this entire hierarchy of spirituality. Put it out of your mind. It's useless. It's worse than useless. It gets in the way. It's worse than useless. It's like you've got this backpack, but it's full of rocks. So when you get to where you need it, you open it up and you've just been carrying around this useless bag of rocks. You can't do anything with it. The thing that John and I are having this fellowship about at this moment is there comes a time when that, whether you chose it or not, will become obvious. When John had this beautiful metaphor, which really speaks to me, that there's a flowering in a human life. And that flowering is a really beautiful thing. It's actually unspeakably beautiful. It's the best thing that can ever happen to anyone. The thing is, you don't get to keep it. That's all it is. You get to experience it, though, if you can. If you have the heart to experience that. And all I'm saying, my entire message is don't let these gurus or whatever talk you out of that. They don't have any method. Fuck that. Get into your own life. Feel what you feel. Okay, John's got his hand up. I'll give it to you, John.
That we own our totality of our perception. We own it. And these religions and gurus and schools of thought will take that flower and the sentience, the inherent sentience, and try to brand it for you. Whether it's Adyashanti, Jesus, or Mohammed, or Buddha, or whatever, they want to remove it from you as something external, outside of yourself, and not recognize what's inherent and true and beautiful without needing any of these brands superimposed upon the brandless. And all religions do it. They complete with the slogans and the logo. I mean, Christianity, you got the logo of the Christ, you got the Jesus saves pitch word, you've got the what they call the visual hammer, no pun intended. And then they sell the idea, especially in youth, up, and then they get a royalty on it. They get a royalty on your own goodness and kindness and empathy and sweetness. And the ones who are, I like Robert's critique of these people who employ all the stagecraft. You have the dais and the flowers and the clothing and the name and all of that, and that's a brand. That's just branding. It's branding something that you already own. It's branding that. And then asking in some way or another for royalty. And to help spread the word on the brand. I say don't buy into it. Own it totally, and don't let any of these camps brand your own goodness and sentience. That's all.
Oh, beautiful. That's also lovely. Of course, we agree. Totally. Don't let anyone put you in a frame, my dears. You're boundless if you only know it. You really are. You may not have any staying power, but each moment is boundless. If you just let it be what it is and don't let anyone put a frame around it, it's seamless, as John says. It's just here, and it's you, and we don't know what that is, and we never will. That's the beauty. You get to live this without knowing. See, that's what I have to share. And now it sounds serious when you put it that way, which is hard to discuss these matters in a lighthearted way, really, because it's very dire in a certain sense. Impermanence is extremely dire. It's about as hard as it gets. I mean, to really take it in. Everyone can just talk about fucking impermanence. Oh yes, everything's transitory, and I know all the koans, so now I'm down with that. But it's not like that. See, it's very sad. If that dimension is missing, you aren't alive. You just aren't, and that's why I laugh, because when something's really sad, what else can you do?
You were very important to me a couple of years ago. Your writing really stopped me in my tracks because I'd been really prone to a lot of optimistic, magical thinking. But when I read your stuff, there was such a sense of, like you say, we all know this and we can't avoid it, but we try to avoid it. And it was very comforting for me. And even now, I find that whatever kind of bind I find myself in, if I just sit with a few paragraphs of what you've written, I can seem to come back into the present moment and just deal with what's in front of me. There's a little bit in your book that just talks about enjoying what you can enjoy and enduring the other stuff. And I think that that is the reality that we're dealing with. And there's something, I think there's something very, it's comforting because it's sanity, it's reality. Things can't be any other way than the way they are. So we can bitch about it if we like, but the fact is, it is what it is, and it's not something else. And this moment is what we have. I've also found a lot of comfort in the discussions that you've had on free will. That's given me a lot of peace. The fact that we didn't choose our parents, we didn't choose the historical time that we're born in, we didn't choose our genetic inheritance, we certainly didn't choose our early childhood environment. And this combination is basically running itself out. I was talking to you this week because I was struggling a little bit with some things I'd read about the early childhood environment and how our sense of self is formed psychologically, and how the experiences we have when we're younger cause us to form beliefs. And we were talking, and I was saying I wasn't sure that I had a question, but I had related very much to some difficult childhood experiences and the beliefs that were formed then. And I kind of felt that if I hold those experiences, then that's how I'm going to see the world. And some of that was quite painful, because what I like to do, what I've always done, is think, okay, here's something about myself I want to change, and then I try to work out mentally how I can change that. But of course, I don't really have the control. So I don't know if you want to say something about that.
You want me to comment?
Yeah.
Before I do, thank you so much for your words. I think really the way that you put it really grasps something essential. This is it. I mean, whatever we may think about it or feel about it, those are data points, doubtless. We notice them, but they don't add up to anything. You can't make anything out of that. This is here, but this is actually here. See? So what you're calling sanity is dealing with what's really here, not with what some expert or religious figure tells me about it, which is nonsense. Okay, so thank you, Kirsten. I think you really got that part about here and now, and that's essential. Yeah. So this other thing you're asking about goes very deep. See, and actually, do you know anything about Melanie Klein, who's a country woman of yours? She was a psychologist. According to Melanie, when the child's first impulse is to suck at the nipple, and the child, it's an instinct. See, this is the first contact with reality. It's going to take place with melt. Okay. Well, when the child does that, there's an immediate gratification, because this is an inborn survival instinct. That it's anything that tends towards survival will be highly gratifying. This is just automatic. It was not that God created it that way. This is how it evolved. The things that were essential had to have a big reward. That's why sex is such a pleasure. I mean, come on, we know this. So, but the first contact is the nipple in the mouth. And the nipple's a good fit. The child sucks. There's really milk there. The milk tastes good. Child drinks the milk. The child feels good after that meal and drops off to sleep. That's one version. Another version is, it's what Melanie called a bad feed. The nipple doesn't quite fit in the mouth, the child's whatever doesn't really suck enough, or there's not enough milk, or the milk tastes sour, or the child drinks the milk and feels sick afterwards, whatever. That is the initial split in the child's entire experience of the outside world. It has no other contact with the outside world. And at that point, in order for the child to cohere as a unitary, as a being, in order to become a person, so to speak, or the child has to cohere inwardly while splitting the breast into a good breast and a bad breast. That split is now out in the world, and I'm intact. This causes neurotic symptoms later in life, because we're still driven by these initial needs to suck, for example, and have it split. I can't go into it here. It's very complicated. You could check out Melanie.
Okay, so I think my question was, if your early childhood experience is causing you to see the world in a certain way, is there anything you can do about that apart from just to be aware?
Good, perfect question.
Yeah.
What do you propose? What do you propose we do?
I don't think that one of the things that I've really got from your work is there is no final answer. So there is no resolution. There's no complete resolution in the mind. So I have the awareness from the things that I was reading this week. I don't think I have any control over how that will play out, because the I that I am now is not going to be the I that's in future situations that might trigger those responses.
Yes, but I'm not saying that that there's no resolution. I've never said that. What I've said is that awakening never ends.
Right.
But certain questions can be entirely put to bed forever. That doesn't mean that there are not other aspects of this experience called myself to be revealed. In other words, what I'm saying is there are no perfect masters. That's just that's a human idea that does not apply to what we really are, which is a growing edge. Now, if something's perfect, there's no growing edge. It's perfect as it is, and it's dead. Living things aren't perfect. They're in a way they are obvious. They're here, but they're not perfect. If we look at our own bodies, we're born with bodily defects. It's not just all smooth sailing where you start at the top of the hill and just have a nice sled down. I mean, that's not how it goes. So try to answer your, go ahead, speak, please.
So were you going to say that in terms of, like, there are some things that you can put to bed? Are you talking about, say, therapy, if you have specific issues you want to look at?
No, I'm saying that I feel no conflict personally about this issue of I'm driven by forces beyond my, first of all, beyond my comprehension. And even if I could comprehend them, beyond my power to go back and rejigger so that I can be a more confident Robert, or whatever the desire is. That would have been one of mine years ago. I was kind of inward, you know. Now I'm speaking because, as John was pointing out, that's the flowering of Robert, is to be doing exactly this, which is, and I know that, and that's why there's no split. it may not be perfect. I may be doing this from a deep woundedness, Kirsten. But soldier on. And that's life. And if you can do that, what John, this beat up old dude, and myself also beat up old dude, what we are saying is, if you can and take him seriously, this guy, this is a beautiful man. I know him personally. He's amazing. Things he does in life are amazing. I actually could praise him a lot. But listen to what he's saying. He doesn't want it. Listen to what I'm saying. He will tell you, and I will tell you, that all you can do is immerse yourself in it. You will never figure this out. You will never get a handle on it. It's wild. It's life.
So this is what you've got. And so
if I'm impaired, and at this point I am in a lot of ways, I'm kind of a aging specimen, and limitations, physical and perhaps mental at this point, begin to, I don't know that, and my friends won't tell me. So at a certain point they'll say, oh yes, it was the year 2021 when he finally lost it. But the works before that were great. We like to read those. after 2021 for him. See, this is what we're really dealing with. So if you can accept that, then what you have now, and you're not dealing with any of this, what you're dealing with is other demons. We'll always, we'll always be wrestling with something.
Yeah.
And it's in the acceptance of that, there's peace.
Yeah.
It's just part of it. It's the ticket. It's the dues you paid to be at the theater, you know. That's all it is. We're born, we're going to die. This is not this pleasure cruise.
Yeah.
And
that's a really beautiful way of putting it.
Yes, and I think that the spiritual people become hypnotized and deluded because what they're really seeking is pleasure. They're hedonists, which is a totally defective way of, in my view, of dealing with these matters. You could do it, get some cocaine and a couple of babes in a hotel room like Donald Trump or something, I guess, if that really would. It didn't seem to really work for him, though. So that's what I have to say about that, Kirsten. You got to swallow what's on the plate while it's on the plate. And if you can do that, then I think that puts it to bed. Then you're just at peace. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you can adopt that attitude exactly, but you can know that there is such an attitude.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, well.
I like what the confession you shared with us about a dream that was part and parcel of awakening, where the storyline and the narrator were looking on the cliff at a structure and the dissipation of that structure as a mental construct. That really spoke to me. That storyline, that narrator storyline that we put so much emphasis on can no more change the outcome of life than a narrator at a football game could change the outcome of the football game. And it dissipates. It just dissipates.
That's funny.
And as my Rasta friend said, no grief, just relief. No grief, just relief. And when I read that really struck home to me.
Oh, yeah, thank you, John. That was a really great dream. It was a premonitory dream. as they call it, meaning that I had the dream, and then later the experience occurred in waking time. Pretty interesting. That was before I had really studied psychology very much. I didn't even know the term premonitory dream at that time. And later, I found that this has occurred many times to many people. Like one beautiful example that has nothing to do with spirituality is the guy who figured out the benzene ring in organic chemistry, which had been a problem that had eluded scientists for years, dreamt of a snake biting its own tail, and when he awakened, wrote the structure of this thing down verbatim immediately, right after the dream. It's pretty interesting. To me, it does not suggest that the dream comes from some other place, which is splitting, Kirsten. That's what splitting. See, okay, I'll stick a pin in this one for a moment, John, to go back to what Kirsten and I were talking about. I'm not a Melanie Klein disciple by any means, but there's something to what she says that rings true in my mind. I can't remember back to sucking at the breast, but I can remember being pretty young and feeling sometimes how beautiful everything was, and other times how annoyed I felt without anything outwardly necessarily having changed. In other words, those aspects are already now engraved. The good breast and the bad breast are engraved in we judge everything, Yes, okay, so that one. So the splitting, see this, okay, to take this a bit further. All of these, you're not, the ego is nothing. It's like dog shit. You have to scrape it off, It's ridiculous. You can't throw it away. Where are you going to put it? Non-duality. How do you non-dual? Where do you see? You said that earlier, John, but I don't think I'd started the recording. I neglected to start it. But you said non-duality is.
Non-duality is absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's absolutely nothing. It's a brand. I watched it being branded. So did John in the 90s. And it took off big. Before that, no one talked about non-duality. Then all these publishing companies and everything pumped it up. Now they get probably non-duality cookbooks and all this. Only flour, no other ingredients. It's a non-dual cake. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. So we have to be, that's it. Throw out that non-duality bullshit. Get it out of your life. It's actually a evil meme. It really is. It's going around now, and it makes idiots out of people. It really does. And the thing that's amazing is they will take some ancient source who was just like I am now sitting before you, no different, a person of wisdom, and not some perfected human, just a wise person who got the idea. So he talks, he gets quoted. Now all these non-duality people, and he happens to be, so he has a name he's Long Chempa, someone like that, someone whose name you would remember, if you're in the Tibetan Buddhism, you've read all this stuff, and okay, well, he's quoted, and the quotation makes perfect sense. And the quotation is all about not splitting. Now some idiot, the idiot who quoted it, says, well, I'm part of the way there, but not yet. I hope to be, but not yet. And he had completely misunderstood what Long Chengpa was saying, but was bowing to it. he was bound to the idolatry of his own hypnotized, split, unexamined, split, entirely unexamined, split mind, which is always in a top dog, underdog posture. Top dog will say, yeah, well, you don't really deserve to feel good the way you're acting. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can. No, you're not. Okay. And we do this to ourselves all the time, see? And spirituality is not the way out of that. The way out of it is radical self-acceptance, as you are right now in this moment. There is no other being. There's nothing else. There isn't. I don't ask you to believe me. Don't say Robert says there's nothing else. That's not the idea. The idea is if you look at it in an open-minded way, I think you'll have to come to that conclusion, that anything else is some idea. And the only thing that's real right now is the broken arm or whatever the fuck it is. And that's what we have to deal with. Whatever happens, even if I'm in considerable pain lying on the ground and all the rest of it, I'm still here. Truly am. And you see what John is attesting to, if I hear you correctly, brother. Even when it hurts, the bliss of existence at all is still obvious. Is that true, John?
Yes. And plastic flowers aren't appealing to me. I like flowers that wither because the beauty is in the withering.
Yeah.
And plastic flowers just don't cut it. And a lot of this seeking and everything are ideas of afterlives and immortality and things is making a plastic flower out of us.
Morning, Robert and John Troy.
Hello there, David.
My condolences about your friend, Mr. Hall, the guy who wrote the preface on the book. I really mean that deeply. And I know that relationship is very, very, very important. So my condolences.
Oh, you mean about Robert Hall?
You know, I think it's important to, really reveal sort of that, Robert was instrumental in helping you sort of come out of the closet and really just say what you're saying today and meeting with people, because Robert helped you come out, speak to some of his classes, and encouraged you to write the book. And you guys probably sat by the porch out there in Mexico and talked many, 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 many hours about many, 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 many things that led to this moment and you being able to freely share something that is quite unique, utterly complex because of its simplicity of a flower, basically, and pointing. So I just wanted to point in Robert's direction, even though he can't be here, he's sort of here through you because he encouraged you to, speak out a little bit more and write a book.
Well, he didn't encourage me to write the book, but our conversations over the years were extraordinary because I'd been here in this town for 7 years before Robert showed up. He showed up in the year 2000. Katanya and I moved down here in '93. And I didn't know anyone else who had my interests at all. So a lot of surfers here then. So I was pretty much down here alone in that regard. I had Katanya, but she and I don't want to talk this way. Why would we? We have better things to do. And so when Robert showed up, it was like instant friendship, and a very interesting friendship, because you said he helped me come out, but actually he's the gay one, and I'm the straight one. So maybe he already knew what it took to come out, we sat there for many hours and discussed these things, and Robert asked me if he could use quote from me in his talks that he gave on Sundays, and I always told him yes, and without attribution. So we had this beautiful kind of thing where we would discuss these ideas. I think I have some ability to put things in interesting ways, and these were very subtle points about they're hard points. They don't really translate into words very much. So we would have these great conversations. Sometimes we would argue. There was a time of a couple of years when Robert was somewhat reluctant about coming to the meetings, our weekly meetings. He was annoyed with me. And then later it turned out that he had shed a skin during that time as a result of our talks. It was really beautiful. It was wonderful to see that. And as far as what he gave me, he was the first really serious Buddhist with all the scholarly background and the practice back, all of it, who I could be alone with and just talk heart to heart, so that these ideas that I'm now expressing could be tested and some of them cleared up. And what Robert gave me most of all was the ability to accept other people in a way that I had been blinded to earlier. Although still having an open heart. It wasn't that I was stingy or anything, but I was just missing something, and Robert has it. And being around him opened my heart to other people in a beautiful way. So that friendship has been important to us both, very, very highly important. And Robert is at the end, pretty much. So we're just saying our goodbyes, David. And
but didn't you also, I noticed that he was a psychologist too. So you guys had another common ground to bond between his Buddhism and your ideas at that particular point. So that was is that correct?
well, he was a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. So he was a medical doctor. He was an army psychiatrist for many years, and had a family with a woman before really coming out, living the second half of his life from his true sexual nature. A very interesting cat, beautiful guy.
I think I was more getting, well, that's interesting too, but I was getting at the fact if he was a psychiatrist, you're a psychologist, that was a real common ground where you each had a deep understanding, obviously, of either, Freud or Jungian, and you had a common ground to come off.
Well, I tend to see things psychologically. And this is what Kirsten and I were discussing earlier about Melanie Klein. I tend to think that those are the best explanations that I've heard for why we are so driven. See, the thing that we all share as humans is this drivenness. This, as I say, when you get older, there's a natural relaxation. It's not so much that you have to discard this as a spiritual practice or some cleanup. No, it's just a natural. Life is its own renunciation. Let's put it that way. You don't need to be renunciate. Everything will be renunciated for you. So then that's good to know, see? And Robert and I totally got that. We got that from the day we met. I mean, we were already both way far along when we met, which made it a really exciting experience to get to know him, because we were already very clear of bullshit when we met. It's very, very nice. So anyway, he's, I guess what I'm saying is I really miss him now, because the talks we're having now are different. He's more like a child. And it's nice. It's not bad. And that's impermanence. See, that's it right there. And if we can accept that, I do, then we can have these relationships without having to put limits on them. A lot of these relationship difficulties that people have, if I can speak as a psychotherapist for a moment, they come from being afraid to live. So, yes, I have this girlfriend and I really dig her, but it's provisional. See, I want everything to be provisional, because if once I really stick my foot in it, then I'm really in it. No, I can't, you see, it's well, adolescence forever, baby. Okay, so Robert and I did not have that when we met. We were both very experienced men, and we had been through a lot, and it was great. So I'm letting him go now, and I've already told him that, and I will always value the beauty that he brought into my life. And I'm going to be sharing other things about him over time, I'm sure. I'll write something. And
he did write a great foreword to your book.
Well, you see, Robert, the thing that Robert saw me instantly, just like I did him, which is great. So he got me to come out because he told me that I was awake. I knew that. It's not that I needed Robert to tell me that I was awake, but I didn't ask him, am I awake? He said, man, you're fucking awake. This is beautiful. You're a teacher of non-duality, he said, and you should be teaching that. And I thought it over. Well, I'm being very honest now. I'm sorry if this goes on very long, but no one else wanted to speak anyway. So now I have to wait. He said, you should be doing this. You're a teacher of non-duality. And I said, oh, Robert, don't put me on an ego trip, man. I don't want to hear that. First thing I said, honest. First thought, best thought, it's just then. Very honest. I didn't want to be a teacher of non-duality and have an inflated ego, because now I'm the teacher of non-duality, and non-duality is the tits. See, I've seen too much of that in my life, far too much. That alpha male gets the harem and la-di-da, la-di-da. So I told Robert, I'm not going to do that. So he's very clever. He sent over someone from his Sangha. He called me on the phone. He said, as if fait accompli, he said, I've sent her over to talk to you. She's not getting it from the Dharma talks, and she's very upset. I want you to speak with her. Well, he's a friend, so I couldn't turn him down, see? And that went pretty well. So soon I had a lot of people come into my thing there where I did psychotherapy, but they weren't coming for psychotherapy. And I did that for a couple of years and did not enjoy it at all. It was a constant strain upon my innate narcissism. Not that I couldn't handle it. I handled it beautifully, I would say. Not a hiccup in the real world, but inwardly, I was not comfortable in that role. It's too much work. Way too much. What we're doing here is good. That's what I'm expressing my gratitude to you all for attending this meeting, for thinking that the things that I say and write are worthwhile. To me, that's an opening. It's a beautiful thing. It's not that I'm this, dispenser of reality or something. No. The thing that Robert did for me, David, was he gave me the confidence to wear the role, let's put it that way, enough to communicate what really wants to be communicated. Because there's something I'm saying that really wants to be communicated. That's so obvious. I feel it, and I know others feel it when they hear it. So clear. And to me, part of that is a sacrifice on a personal level. It's hard to explain this, and I wish I could, but I'm mentioning it because maybe someone will understand it and say something to me about it at some point. That actually it may seem cool to be sitting here doing this, but on a personal level, it has a price. And I think that is what keeps a lot of people from being really honest, because then you have to be very vulnerable. Everyone's going to see you, really fucking see you, because you haven't put up any screen. And I like it, don't get me wrong, you know, but you have to be a bit of a masochist or something to really like it. Probably am. Okay, I've occupied far too much time in my autobiography. So I want to say something else. Richard Elkin, I see you and your amigo there. Welcome. Could you check in, Richard? I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, how are you? My friend Tom is here with me. He had something he wanted to say.
Okay. Before he speaks, Richard, I'm just so glad to see you. I loved having you at that last meeting that you made, and I know you've been busy selling jewelry.
Attempting to sell jewelry, yes.
Yeah.
I appreciated our chat the other day. I just wanted to, one thing that sort of came up recently that's been kind of interesting for me is you talk about the idea of there's no doer. And I know it's a little different than the old Zen koan about the student getting kicked in the shin. That's sort of the no self koan. But I was a potter for many, many years, and I was a production potter. So I didn't make one of a kind art pieces. I made, 100 vases at a time, or 100 coffee cups at a time, or whatever it might have been. And I would go into my studio I lived up in the mountains in New Hampshire. In the summer, it was especially nice. There was, I had a big 4-foot wide door with a piece of screen over it that was on the edge of a pine forest. And the heat-driven scent of the pine would waft in, and I would stand up at my potter's wheel and gaze out the window as I threw 100 mugs or whatever it was that day. Frequently at the end of the day, I would stand back and see this pile of ware boards full of all these pots just stacked. And there would be some there that I didn't know who made them. And those, honestly, those to my eye were different and more beautiful. And there's a story of Shoji Hamada, who was a Japanese production potter. And whenever he threw tea bowls, which were, of course, the most austere form one would make as a Japanese potter, he would always invite someone to his studio to talk with them, to distract him while he was making the tea bowls, so that he wouldn't pay too much attention to what he was doing and fuck him up. So this idea of no doer to me is that's how I relate to it, and it happens with full engagement. We talked a little bit about it in a post the other day, and that idea that of presence without intellectualization, without filtering and sorting, but just being present for it is What actually comes up is this really beautiful, authentic, unfiltered stuff, which sometimes smells like shit and sometimes smells like roses. But it's really quite that simple. So my relating to that no doer is through that experience that I just recalled. But I just hijacked my friend Tom here.
All right, well, before Tom speaks, let me just comment on what you said. I thought that was really a beautiful conversation that we had, both the public one and then the private messages. And, I thought the part that stuck in my mind was you're saying, yeah, I said ego isn't like some dog shit that you just scrape off your shoe. It's not like that. And you said, but sometimes my ego smells like shit. And I said, well, but you can't throw it, even if it is shit, you can't throw it away. Where would you put it? That is non-duality. Nothing can be thrown away. Nothing. There's no place to put it. This is it. See, and if you want to clean this up, there's no trash heap to put out the trash and improve yourself. Forget about it. This is it. See, that's non-duality. And it's very simple. There's no reason to really brand it. As John was saying, wise people have understood this for eons. It's in the literature. Robert Saltzman isn't this genius who came up with these ideas for the first time in human history or something. And so you have to try to understand that. This is the human mind. It's been expressing itself like this for a very, very long time. Very long time. It's the human experience.
That I think is here and I think has been unspoken. And I would like to bring it up.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for bringing it up. A little earlier, I said that this process here, I feel has a kind of a personal cost to me. I think that what I hear you expressing is another side of that, if I can put it that way. Let me run this by you. Tell me if it rings a bell. I have a very definite perspective, and I'm going to share it without quarter. Now, I'm not the first human to do this. In every generation, there are people who speak exactly as I speak, precisely. I can go back in time and notice them. Yeah, their metaphors are different because that's a historical and linguistic thing. And their scientific knowledge is different because science marches on. But the basic idea that there's some kind of hierarchy of understanding is one that I embrace. And I don't think that mentioning it and shining a light on it is a put down of anyone. Not everyone is equipped to discuss these matters in this way, but I'm not going to let that stop me from discussing them in this way. And anything else is just collateral damage. No one has to tune into this. No one is forced to listen to what I'm saying. I'm a destroyer. I am Kali. There's too much bullshit, I say. That's my point of view. Other ones might say, Robert, you're taking the very heart out of life. The beautiful thing is bhakti and our devotional practices, and this is how we gain meaning. Or, oh, I'm sorry. My intelligence was suppressed for a very long time. I had it, but I wasn't allowed to speak it. But I'm done with that, man. I'm done with any kind of self-restriction whatsoever. It doesn't exist for me anymore. So if that wounds you, I'm sorry. I mean that. I'm deeply sorry. I don't want anybody to be wounded, but I know that some people will. But if I let that stop me, that I just want to be kind, continually kind, then I would be a bleeding heart. And I'm not a bleeding heart. I'm a Kali. Just a different role.
Well,
Any comment, please?
I accept that, and I'm not sure what the step beyond Kali is, but perhaps I'm coming from there, that there's something beyond impermanence. Well, an acceptance of impermanence is a step. And then there's a place where emptiness comes in, and everything arises from that place of emptiness.
Excuse me. Are you there now, brother?
I am here. Right here.
Are you in the state that you're talking about, or this is a recollection?
No, this is for me pretty much all the time.
Okay, well then you have nothing to dispute with what I'm saying. If that's really the case, we're in the same boat.
I don't dispute what you're saying. But what I am saying is that sometimes stopping there causes discomfort, and it doesn't always have to.
Oh, well, you know what? I really don't appreciate this approach, because if you're here to educate me, don't.
I'm not trying to educate you.
Yes,
I'm
you are.
telling
What you're saying is, Robert, you've come so far, but there's some place beyond that. I know what it is. Let me elucidate that. I'm not buying it, man. I'm done with that bullshit. And what I'm telling all of the rest of us here is, be done with that bullshit. Find the ground of your own motherfucking being. Not give me a lecture on how to find mine.
You don't want to hear what I found?
I don't want to hear what you have found when you start out this way. No, of course not. It's a terrible approach. There are approaches. I've discussed this with all kinds of people, and I'm totally willing to, but not when you are the authority. I won't buy it. Okay?
No.
All right, well, that's the way it is then. You don't have any use for me. And that's what I meant about a personal cost. You have no idea how beautiful this is, what I'm speaking. You're blind to it. You see pain in it. Well, that's too bad. It's beautiful. And a lot of people are telling me that it is. I know that it is. The women of wisdom have gathered behind me. They're producing this book of my words and these images, Rashani, and they're all doing all these crones of great wisdom. Have read the book and said, this guy's good. Give him a little push. So if you don't like it, fuck off, okay? You don't have to like what I'm saying. Fine if you don't. But I just don't want you to come here and educate me, man. What an idea. You come here and listen to an hour of this, and now you want to teach me something? It better be good. I could pull a Nisargadatta, because what he would do is say, now get out of here and don't come back. And I do feel like saying that to you, but I won't. I would rather that you come to understand what I've just said in a reasonable way and give me the same space you're giving yourself. That's all I'm asking for. If you think you got it figured out, then grant me the same space. I got my thing figured out. So you can have your world, and I'll have my world. And in my world, I'll be speaking to many people who enjoy this kind of thing and have read my book and loved it and all that. That'll be my world. And in your world, you will not cause any pain to anyone. And that's fine. We both have our lives. Okay, I'm sorry that we had to descend into egoic matters.
That's how it is.
That's how it motherfucking is. And
That's how it is.
yes, David, and the thing that I think people like about me and that I like about me is that this is the way it motherfucking is. And that's motherfucking fine with motherfucking me. And when someone says, well, Robert, you know, that's so cool. Howard said, you know, the thing I like about you is, yeah, you know about all this Buddhism, but you laugh about it. That's why I laugh. I understand that Tom has no choice. I get that. I get it. I'm not angry with him. I'm not saying I'm the best thing since sliced bread. This is just this. I'm just occupied. I'm a link in a chain. I'm just doing my little bit. Then the flower falls off the stalk, as John was saying. This isn't some kind of permanent situation. That's why I can participate in it in such an open-hearted way and even appear foolish if that's what has to happen. It's only momentary. If you found something beyond that, mazel tov, baby, bow to it, do whatever you have to. It's great. It's not me. I'm sane and in this world alive. And in my world, people die. And everything they were disappears along with them. And that's beautiful. It's the impermanence in life that brings this beauty, if you only knew it. As soon as you can embrace the impermanence of a kiss, you can really kiss someone. Otherwise, it's just habit. It really is. Impermanent sex is the only kind to have. Please take my word for it. As John was saying, no plastic flowers. No plastic sex toys either. Who has a serious comment that will bring us back down to planet Earth?
What I have found that impermanence obliterates all role models. And there's a tendency in the spiritual community to assign certain qualities in one who might be seen as teaching as a role model in their behavior in life. And impermanence obliterates that. There are no role models. There's no role model that you could compare Robert or anybody else. And those who are doing role models are being critiqued, whether it's Adyashanti or Ramana Maharshi or whoever it is, those who are playing those roles and looking at a role model for something maybe you'd want to do, but that person isn't doing, that's bullshit, in my opinion. And I like in fellowship to be with people who aren't doing that, because it clutters the fellowship.
It clutters the fellowship. I like that. I'm sorry, John, I've interrupted.
So there are no role models. While I have a chance, I'd like to do a call out for the birds that I hear singing. You must have some nice, happy birds in your neighborhood.
We do, but we also have 4 young cats who were born here 3 or 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whenever, and they're just coming of age. So the birds really have to watch their ass this year. These are feral cats, supposedly feral, although Catania feeds them now, so they're like midway between a kept cat and a street cat. Oh God, this is so much fun. It is. It is. I hope you've forgiven me by now, Tom, but you really needed to be told off, in my view. Because truly, this is the idea here is not that you're going to progress me to the next step. I mean, I had said at the outset that that's not what we're doing here. There is no next step. This is it. all of us are here in this space, and this is it. I feel so fortunate to be in a space with these intelligent, sensitive people. I really mean that. And my Facebook page also. I love my Facebook page. It took me years to get that. John can tell you, and other people who followed my work years ago, I had this beautiful chat room, the Dr. Robert Forum, and we discussed things mostly from a psychological point of view on that deal, not so much spirituality as the Facebook page. And one day, some vandals just trashed it and put swastikas and horrible pornography all over the page. And I got some guy I knew to try to stay ahead of it and clean it up and put in, this was on a channel called 4chan, which is now kind of famous for being this way, but it was a struggle. And then in the old days on Facebook, John can tell you this, he started a group and he asked me to help him admin it. So as the admin, I'd always be getting into these battles with people, the battle royale over the meaning of one thing or another. It was so boring. I was, shit, man. And that's what I was saying to Tom. I don't want to hear that. Well, why should I? Why don't? My days of listening to instruction are over. There is no more. This is what John was saying. Sorry, now I'm back to your theme, John. I went awry. What you were saying was exactly right. If in impermanence there are no masters, there's no pattern. This is a once upon a once. It's what it is right now. It's impermanent. You can't touch it. You can't hold it. You can't make anything out of it. You can't improve it. It just is what it is. And what it is to you is what it is to you. And what it is to me might be something entirely different. It's like when I was doing spiritual teaching, one analogy I would say to explain this, I would say, let's say these two guys are sitting on a park bench and this really beautiful babe walks by swinging her butt, you know? And one guy says to the other, boy, I'd like to cut me a slice of that. And the second guy says, hey, wait a minute, that's my sister. Now you see, it's the exact same stimulus, but it's two different minds. There's nothing permanent in it. That's what you are, your ego. It's everything that you think is important is you. And then you call that the ego, and you think that there's some progress in scraping it off your shoe like some dog shit. No, there isn't. That is you. Going back to what Kirsten was asking about earlier, if we go back to early first months of life, a lot of impressions are gained during that time precognitively, entirely precognitively. We never will have a word for them, and we won't even know they're there. We can't know they're there because we weren't there when they were formed. The me I am now was not present when I was 3 months old. That happened later in life, that there became a separate sense of self. So this sense of self that everybody wants to have these religious ideas about, that's just a bunch of bullshit. Nobody knows that. The higher self and all this crapperoo, fuck that. Just fuck it, man. Don't come here and start to lecture me about higher planes. I don't want to hear that bullshit. This is it. And if it isn't it, and you're aspiring to the next thing, you are deluded, I say. If you disagree, you have every right. That's my message. If you're in a sense of aspiration, you are hypnotized by the idea of transcending this. There's no transcendence. This is it. There's no other place. There never is. There never will be. Okay, enough of that. Who wants to get involved here?
I'd like to say something. In the discussion of impermanence, and I've talked with Robert about this before, I've been in a couple of situations where I've almost been killed. And a couple where guns are on me. A couple, I put myself in a situation. And what I found interesting about being in one situation in particular was turning around, having a gun pointed at my stomach by a guy shaking, and thinking to myself, well, I better not do anything quickly, because if he's shaking, this gun that's pressed against my gut might go off. And it felt like an eternity, and someone came out of a closed area, and the guy almost flinched, and almost, but he didn't, and the robbery was over. And the one thing that I carry with me now is how precarious to dance on that wire at that moment when you have no control. I know that's what's really real right now. Hey, by the way, Tom, Robert a couple of years ago almost kicked me off Facebook.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what I was saying earlier. What I'm doing here comes with a personal cost, because I'm really letting it hang out. And I am an elitist. I just am. And the reason that I am is quite simple, if you really want to hear it. I know we're all in the same boat as human beings. As John said, I see equality. We're all in the same wheel. But our talents are so widely varied. There are Einsteins on this planet, and there are idiots on this planet. And what I'm saying is, although there are some Einsteins who are religious, there are some, I know that. And for them, I have respect, because they've gone into it deeply. And they found something through their investigations, and I accept that. But religion is also, and especially New Age spirituality and non-duality, that's a hiding place for people who really don't have sufficient mental capacity to understand these matters. So they don't take it on. They buy an explanation that is received from above and buy into it. And they are hypnotized by their own buying in. And this permanent self is one of those, in my view, in my opinion, in my experience. The permanent self is a kind of lie that we tell ourselves, because the idea of personal extinction is unthinkable. You may be able to think about it in words. That's one thing. And that is where religion and spirituality is in my boat. I don't see any beauty in it. I see delusion, except for this 1%, as I always say, or 5%, or 10%, whatever it is, where I'm happy in that slice of religion and spirituality, if you want to call it that. What I'm speaking here, let's call it philosophy is a better word. I am speaking here philosophically as a kind of Stoic. Would have been recognized by the Romans and Greeks. This is Stoicism that I'm talking about here. You don't have to buy it, Tom, but I don't buy all this non-duality bullshit, as John was saying. It's nothing. It doesn't contribute to our sense of understanding. It's a will-o'-the-wisp that you buy into because some authority told you that that's the way things are, and you bought it. And if you don't believe me, just be non-dual, and it's over. You don't have to. I won't exist anymore. You don't need me. You won't care what I say. You won't come here with expectations of enlightening me either. You'll see that it's all just you. That's what non-duality is. It's all just you. It's all it is. Everything you see, think, and feel is you. They don't exist out there. There may be reference points for them out there. I think there are, because that's how we survive as animals. We have to touch things and eat our food and reproduce and all that. That's kind of out there, but it isn't what we see. There's something out there, but what we make of it is me. That's non-duality, not a bunch of beliefs about ultimate understanding. The idea of ultimate understanding is rat poison to an intelligent mind. It's rat poison. Final understanding, rat poison, I say. But I'm a Kali. If you're a Bhakti, have at it, man. I'm going on like this because that burr got under my saddle. It's the first time anyone's tried that on me in this forum. And it's so much not what I want to do. That's not what we want to do here. Come here and lock horns with Robert, tell him how much he's hurting everyone. Oh, fuck. Okay, I'm sorry. On to the next thing.
Can I ask a question, Robert?
Please do. Goran.
It's from the book, page 25. If it's okay, I read a sentence.
Please do.
It says, I did nothing to awaken. An old friend had been pointing out to me various ways in which I was wrapped up in egotism. So that may have loosened the lacings a bit. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. If someone comes to me with a desire for freedom, I can tell that person that you have to observe yourself for a while and see what needs to be freed and what it needs to be freed from. And a lot of those things from which we need to be freed are attachments to likes and dislikes and my reputation and what people think of me and what kind of appearance I'm putting on and whether people like me or not and all that. Those are attachments. That's the ego. And so what my friend was telling me, my friend Walter was showing me more than tell, it was more show than tell. He would put me in positions where I would be forced to see that I was acting like an idiot. He was good at it. He was an amazing teacher. Then when you see that, if you're fortunate, you go, shit, I'm doing that. And after you see that for a few times, then you may not always want to just defend this I as if it was the greatest gem in the universe and you got to just take care of it and make sure nothing bad happens to it. You might say, gee, I've got this and so does everyone else. It's almost like a rash or gonorrhea or something. Not going to. Well, Goran John was referred to this dream that I had. That was the dream. In this dream, I'm rowing. I'm out to sea and I'm rowing. And it's one of these gray days where the ocean is slate gray and so is the sky. And so the horizon line is almost non-existent. It's just like being inside a gray sphere, featureless. And I'm rowing, And it's the paradoxical dream language because although I'm rowing, and I should be looking back from where I came with the sea behind me, it's the other way around. I'm rowing, but I'm headed out to sea. And I feel compelled to turn around. And when and I'm seeing nothing in front of me but an infinity of gray. I turn around, and behind me is this cliff, headlands, like the white cliffs of Dover or something. And on there is this giant mansion, maybe 100 or more rooms. And it's moldering away. It's rotting, and some windows are broken. It needs maintenance. And the only thing that's stopping it from getting swept down into the sea is this very elaborate construction of buttresses and supports. And I see that I had been the one that was putting all those buttresses and supports in there to hold this thing up. That was my entire labor in life, in a way, if you're really honest. And I was rowing away from that and never needed to do it again. And I felt this intense freedom in this dream. And I woke up, and it was pretty shocking to me, because I got the feel, I knew what it meant in a way. I really knew what it meant. And it was very powerful. And it happened around the time that I had this Kensho experience that I wrote about in the first chapter or two of The 10,000 Things, which you've read, yes.
Yeah.
Where I saw, I'm not making this. This is all just here. This is happening. I could just sit here. I'm not making anything.
Thank you, Robert.
Anything more to say? It's nice to have you here. I appreciate your presence.
I really liked it. So would it be beneficial if I hanged out with other guys? Then we would point out if we could see each other's egotism. Would it be useful?
If you have a friend that you can do that with, that'd be wonderful. Yeah. But don't make a game out of it. That could easily become some kind of gotcha game, and that's not the idea. It's not like you're trying to embarrass the guy. It's just somebody who would tell you, you know, that thing you said, it sounded a little fishy, or whatever, something like that. See, someone who can say, I'm not sure if I go along with that. More like that. And then you talk to someone like that, and well, that's what I did with Robert Hall for years. That's what I was talking about earlier. We were just very honest with each other. And I've done that with John Troy. We haven't had that much time together. We had we had 2 times together, extended 1 week duration both times. And I remember them so fondly. They're just so excellent.
Robert, would you say when you know that everything is you, like when a fear pops up, or some anger comes, or some anxiety, I don't know, I guess if you're human, I guess you feel that sometimes. But the knowing that is also you, is that somehow, how would I say, some kind of relief in that? Do you understand how I mean? Is it like, it's painful, yes, but it's still me. It's, in that sense, is it more okay than if I separate it, that this is something happening to me?
That's what you would have to try to find out. Yeah, exactly. You could experiment with that. In other words, you could tell yourself, I'm going to try out this idea that I heard from Robert. I'm going to try to embrace what is arising, not feel this is happening to me. But it's like when I broke my arm. There I am. I tripped over a wire and fell onto a concrete deck. And it was a very bad fall. I also smashed my elbow pretty badly, but it didn't break. But the arm broke up here. And there I am lying on my back on this concrete. It took me a few seconds to comprehend what had occurred. So much for being in the moment. See, it was way after the fact. And then here I am lying there, see? And I could say, why did this happen to me? But that would be a very ineffective question. It wasn't that. The only question that occurred to me is, now what do I do? And that is a good question. The question, why do these things always happen to me, is not a useful question. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't help you deal with anything. The way that you deal with something is to say, this is, if you can't say this is me, then at least say this is mine. Everything that happens to me is mine to deal with, to chew up and swallow bite by bite. That's what living is. I have this now. Sometimes the now is beautiful. I've got a nice meal in front of me and the leisure to eat it. Other times someone's got a gun pressed up against my belly, but it's all mine. See, it's me. It is my life. That's the idea, not to sit in judgment of your anger or something. And there's nothing wrong with anger. We're just told that there is because people are afraid of becoming homicidal. That's a human fear that I might go off the rails and do something crazy. See? And some people do. Okay. So you see, we human beings are very frightened by our animal nature. So that's why we have religion and all that, to try to put that in a box. And I'm someone who I don't have it in a box. I have had, so I know the difference. Much easier now because I'm in my 70s, so there's not all that much drives to box up anymore. So that's why it becomes a bit easier. That's why you have these old fellows of wisdom. They're not too many 30-somethings here who've got their shit together. They can get on stage with flowers, as John was saying, and make a good show of it. John had this really crazy guy. What's his name again? Bentino, right? Bentino? Tell that story, John, about when Bentino came to see you.
Bentino. He was making in his early rounds, and he was a guest on a radio show, and he said he was going to move to North Carolina, and they were looking at a piece of property right up the mountain from where my son was living. So I said, well, I can put you in touch with some folks around here. And we were having one of our little get-togethers up in the mountains. We had about 80-some people coming together. Everybody just pitching in and going with the flow, and nobody charging any money for anything. And Bentino wanted to have a notch to speak. And so in that process, I was privy to a Backstage email where he was emailing everybody out that he was like the Messiah, and he wanted to be sitting on a rock in Asheville where hordes of people could come by and kiss his feet. And we go on and on, many little things like that back here. So I contacted him and says, I can't honestly feel good about you speaking to our family, our extended family, and so I'm going to uninvite you to do that, but you can come. You can come and be a part of us if you like. And so he did show up. and he was a little embarrassed about it all. And I had dinner with him, and several of my friends had dinner with him at the same time. We all felt the same sense that this guy was really on a narcissistic ego trip and was fleecing the flock. And that's not the kind of fellowship that we enjoyed being around. And so then I had other people who had been in a relationship with Bentino who confessed their own stories with him, and it started growing. But you could see what was going down and what has become, the new age Messiah, Bentino. And that guy is so full of shit. I mean, it's just all about Bentino. And Bentino stops at his skin. It stopped. There's no fusion with reality around Bentino. So I've had the fate of being backstage pretty much across the board. I've just been part of what my storyline has been. I've been backstage everywhere, and backstage ain't like the stagecraft, and it's pretty revealing, and goes from Muktananda to Ramana Maharshi to all of them, all of these so-called spiritual figures. Backstage, it's ordinary human beings, except there's a little more narcissism evident in those who are doing the stagecraft and positioning as the spiritual teacher and the guru and all that. And then they have their God squads, and then it becomes taboo to be equal to the one on the dais. And then the hierarchy starts, and the bullshit starts, and the goals are put in, and the practice is set forth, and they're branding your own sentience and and charging your royalty for it, and you've got to recruit new business. It's a Ponzi scheme. And I feel the same way about them that Robert does. Fuck them all. I mean,
John,
and I've seen a lot on stage, and that's just what I see. And to me, it's not some spiritual revelation. It's just common sense. It's just common sense.
it's really amazing to me that certain historical figures are seen as infallible fonts of truth, while those of us who are sitting here speaking truthfully are called into question. It's really absurd in a way. We can only speak our own truths after all. What else is there? There isn't anything else but your truth. There is no truth out there, some kind of overwhelming truth that someone will explain to you and now you'll know. What an idea. And that's the idea that
They're all plastic.
So, John,
they're all plastic flowers.
The only thing I'm wondering as I listen to you, John, is which one of us, if they had a rant contest, and I wonder who would win the rant contest, you or me? Clearly, one of us would go home.
I can rant backstage. I rant backstage. And hanging with you is like hanging backstage.